Hi, so in this presentation we're going to be looking at English infixation. This is really an interesting phenomenon that we find in English, and one of the things I think is most interesting about it is that it's something that you never have to be taught, that we all seem to kind of figure it out quickly and easily without much learning from it, without much exposure to it. We all seem to be able to do it. And certainly it's not something that you were ever taught in school. But before I jump into it, I want to just talk about a few other things. So, first of all, I'm going to be looking at this particular fucking right here, and then there's several others in this sentence. So I'll read the sentence first and then I'll talk about it. My fucking idiotic fucking professor is fucking making me fucking read this fucking lousy fucking book. So this is what I call emphatic fucking. So this is a fucking whose purpose is to add emphasis, to add emotion to a sentence. And beyond that, it doesn't really have any purpose in the sentence. Now, this sentence that I just read to you is a perfectly good sentence of English, perfectly grammatical, and I think we can all agree on that descriptively it's perfectly grammatical. Now, you may not like having that many fuckings in one sentence, it may meet your fucking threshold, but it's a good sentence when it comes down to it. So, that particular fucking is a word. It's just a free word, and it can show up in most every position in a sentence. Not every position, and we'll talk a little more about this in the next chapter when we get into syntax, but many positions, it's a really flexible word of English. But it's a word. It's a free morpheme. What we're going to be interested in is a different form of fucking that is not a free morpheme, it's a bound morpheme. So let me explain that a little bit. A free morpheme is anything that can be a word by itself. That you don't have to have anything attached to it to make it a word, like come, for example, or then, or and, or fix. Without the at the end, fix is a free morpheme. So all of those can be words by themselves, and then there are other morphemes that have to be attached to words, like the -ed on fixed, and like these prefixes here. So, and I expect this is review for you. These are prefixes, and let me just kind of highlight what I'm saying here. So we'll start with prefixes, and we see that we've got the pre, as in these genes come pre-fucked up, and the re, as in I fixed it and then he re-fucked it up, and then can we unfuck it up, the un there. All of those are prefixes. They come before the root. And then, of course, we have suffixes, which come after the root. So the root here being shit in all of these cases, and we've got less e and ing as suffixes. So in the first examples, we've got our root is fuck in all three of these, and in the suffixes, our root is shit in all three of these. Prefixes come before the root, suffixes come after the root, and those prefixes and suffixes, they're bound morphemes, meaning they have to attach to a root. They have to attach to some free morpheme in order to survive. They're parasites. They need to glom onto something else in order to survive. So those are prefixes and affixes, and again, I expect that is just review. But what's interesting is that we also have a third sort of affix, what's called an infix. Now, in the world's languages, infixes are not as common as prefixes and suffixes, but they do exist. And an infix comes inside of the root. So again, if our root is fuck, then an infix would either have to come after the fuck or after the to be inside of it. If our root is shit, then the infix would have to come after the sh or after the I. Right? So a prefix would come before the sh, a suffix would come after the t, and same thing with before the f for a prefix, and after the k for a suffix, but an infix is going to come inside of the root. And like I said, there are some languages where this is a very productive process. It can be used, for example, to create tenses. It can be used to create plurals. So there are languages that do this. But English, we usually don't think of it having infixes, but in fact English does have some infixes. But interestingly, they tend to be taboo, or they tend to be euphemisms based on taboo words, like substitutions like freaking. So we've got then words like incredible, and we can insert a freaking inside of incredible, or a bloody inside of absolutely, or fucking inside of politician, or goddamn inside of Alabama. And in each of those cases, we see we've got a root, incredible, absolutely, politician, Alabama, and we've got our infix. And again, infixes in English tend to be taboo for whatever reason. Now, the one that we're going to be focusing on is fucking, but the same principle are going to apply to all of the infixes of this type in English. Now, the thing is, though, that of course we can't just insert a fucking in any word we feel like it, right? So just any free morpheme isn't going to allow it. And so I've got some examples here. So you can say, who are you calling order fucking Mary? It sounds pretty good to me. But who are you calling reggae fucking lur? Sounds bad to me. It just doesn't work for me. You better learn to recognize good shit when you see it. Okay, not terrible to me. Whereas you better learn to distinguish or distinguish good shit from bad shit. That's awful to me. I just can't get either one of those. Distinguish or distinguish. Micro soft gives me a headache. That sounds great to me. Not the sentence, and you might relate to the sentence, but the just micro soft. It just rolls off the tongue. It sounds good. Whereas lin fucking nuts or the fucking nuts, bad. It just doesn't work. Linux doesn't lend itself to a fucking inside of it. Lin fucking x, no. You've got some mo fucking Joe. That sounds good. You've got some math fucking jick or mad fucking eek. Sounds terrible. Fan fucking tastic. That sounds great, right? Everybody likes fan fucking tastic. But fabu-fucking-less, not so good. Fab fucking-ulous is even worse, and fab fucking-bulous is terrible. So, of those three, I think fabu-fucking-less is the best, but it's not that great. And it's not just my saying that. I'll give you sort of an illustration of this. So, if you do a search, you have to use quotation marks around it so that you're searching on the actual word itself. So if you put quotation marks around fantastic, I got 443 million hits on Google. If I put quotation marks around fabulous, I get 184 million hits. So obviously, and I think you have that intuition that fabulous is just not as common of a word as fantastic. And in fact, if we do a ratio, we find that fantastic is used 2.4 times as often as fabulous. That's not surprising. I think that most people would probably guess that fantastic is used at least twice as often as fabulous. Now, with that in mind, I did another search, this time with quotation marks around fan-fucking-tastic. And not surprisingly, you get far, far fewer hits off of fan-fucking-tastic than you get off of fantastic. And then I did a fabu-fucking list with quotation marks around it and got even fewer hits, 4,610 hits. And what I want you to notice there is the ratio changes. Now it's 16 to 1. So now you're finding fan-fucking-tastic 16 times, more often than fabu-fucking-less. So that kind of confirms my intuition the Fabufucking list, while it's not terrible, it's just not all that good. Whereas Fanfucking-tastic is really pretty good. And so you're going to find it much, much more frequently than you would find the Fabufucking list. Now, the last thing I want you to think about is that exercise I had you do for the data collection, where I had you identify which words you can put the fucking inside of. So Alabama, sorry about those, the hyperlinks, I don't know why I'm getting those. Okay, so Alabama sounds pretty good, I think, with fucking inside of it. Ala-fucking-bama. That sounds really good. Whereas others of these sound pretty terrible, and your job in the data collection was to identify which ones sound really good and which ones sound terrible, and which ones are so-so. Okay, we'll talk about this, or look at the at your intuitions and see what sorts of data we were able to collect from this, and then I'll do a bit of an analysis on it based on a theory of how this works, a hypothesis. We'll be looking at the hypothesis in the next couple of videos, and then I'll look at how it works out with your intuitions and whether the hypothesis matches your intuitions or whether we really need to go back and revisit the hypothesis.